A 200-ton bomber, screaming low through the sky, fast enough to shake the ground, agile enough to look impossible. 4 afterburner flames tearing the atmosphere apart. 75,000 pounds of bombs in its belly. This is the B-1 Lancer. And it is not what it was supposed to be. The B-1 Lancer was designed for one mission: to deliver nuclear weapons into the heart of the Soviet Union. It never did. In 4 decades of combat, this 200-ton supersonic bomber has fought in almost every major American air campaign. In Afghanistan, just 8 B-1s dropped nearly 40% of coalition ordnance in the first 6 months of the war. And it has never once released the weapon it was born to carry. Not one nuclear bomb. Not over Moscow. Not anywhere. Because somewhere between its birth in the darkest years of the Cold War and its first combat mission 24 years later, this aircraft became something else. Something no engineer designed. Something no politician planned. This is the story of the most feared strategic bomber America ever built, and the identity it was never allowed to have. The story begins in Palmdale, California, a clear desert morning, December 1974. Rockwell test pilot Charles Bach Jr. lifts a strange new aircraft off the runway at Air Force Plant 42. When the 4 afterburners light, the desert does not just hear the aircraft, it feels it. The aircraft is called the B-1A, and on paper, it is the most ambitious bomber America has ever attempted. Mach 2.2 at altitude, 4 General Electric F-101 engines, an engine family that would later help shape the F-110 that powered the F-14 Tomcat and F-16, and the F-118 that would power the B-2 stealth bomber. But what made the B-1 extraordinary was its variable sweep wings. The wings could extend to 15 degrees for takeoff and landing on short runways, and sweep back to 67.5 degrees to cut through the air at supersonic speeds. The same aircraft could carry 75,000 pounds of bombs off a 4,000-foot runway, fly 3,000 miles unrefueled, and dive on its target faster than a fighter jet. A bomber with the heart of a fighter jet. The mission was simple: fly low, fly fast, slip under Soviet radar, deliver nuclear weapons to Moscow. End the Cold War in a single strike. But the Cold War was already changing. In September 1976, a Soviet pilot named Viktor Belenko defected to Japan in a MiG-25 Foxbat. During debriefing, he gave American intelligence a clearer picture of how fast Soviet air defense technology was evolving. Better radars, better look-down capability. The B-1 had been designed to survive by hiding beneath radar. What if the radar started looking down? Then came June 30th, 1977. President Jimmy Carter walked into the White House briefing room and said the sentence that killed the program. The B-1 bomber will not be required. 244 aircraft gone. The bomber built to terrify Moscow was killed in Washington. In November 1980, everything changed. Ronald Reagan won the presidency partly by campaigning against Carter's weakness. On October 2nd, 1981, Reagan made it official. 100 B-1 bombers were ordered from Rockwell. But the aircraft that returned was not the same one Carter had killed. The new B-1B traded raw speed for survivability. Mach 2.2 became Mach 1.25. But what was added mattered far more than what was subtracted. The B-1B's radar cross-section was reduced to roughly 1/50th that of the B-52. A 200-ton bomber now appeared on enemy radar screens no bigger than an F-16. Not stealth, but small enough to shrink the vocal window of a missile battery to almost nothing. Combined with terrain-following radar that allowed it to fly just 200 feet above the ground at near supersonic speed, the B-1B became something that had never existed before. A strategic bomber that could thread between two air defense radars at a speed the human eye could barely track. Half of its soul had died in the redesign, and the other half was about to. August 29, 1984, 10:23 in the morning, Mojave Desert, a B-1A prototype begins to lose control. In the cockpit is Tommy Douglas Benefield, 55 years old, chief test pilot for Rockwell. A fuel transfer error has shifted the aircraft's center of gravity dangerously aft. The nose rises. The bomber is no longer behaving like an aircraft. At 4,200 feet, Benefield gives the order. The crew triggers the escape capsule. It blasts away in a violent burst of pyrotechnics, but the parachute system does not deploy correctly. The capsule tips nose down and hits the ground at 40 miles per hour. 2 men survive. Doug Benefield does not. He becomes the first man killed by the B-1. The timing is almost cruel. He dies 6 days before the first B-1B is rolled out in Palmdale, the new aircraft that has individual ejection seats, the very technology that might have saved him. 7 weeks later, on October 18, 1984, the first B-1B takes to the sky. Somewhere in those early months, a newspaper reporter writes about the new bomber. They drop the hyphen in B-1. They write Bone. The nickname sticks. To the pilots, to the crew chiefs, it would forever be the Bone. On paper, the Bone was a nuclear bomber. On the runway, it flew like a fighter. On paper and in the sky are two very different things. January 17, 1991, 3 o'clock in the morning, Baghdad time. Operation Desert Storm begins. F-15 launch from Saudi bases. F-16 streak across the Iraqi border. F-117 stealth fighters slip into Baghdad's night sky. The B-1B, one of the most politically controversial bombers in the American arsenal, stays home. It stays home for the entire war. The reason cuts straight to the aircraft's identity. The Bone had been built, wired, and trained around a nuclear mission. Its electronic attack systems did not support guided conventional bombs. Its bomb bays were configured for a single kind of weapon, the kind the world hoped would never be used. Colonel Jeff Taliaferro, a B-1 pilot at the time, later described what the crews felt. It was horrible. When the nation's at war, you want to be part of it. For an entire war, the bomber built to penetrate Soviet airspace sat on the sidelines. Then something even more important happened. In the mid-1990s, following the START I treaty, the Air Force began removing the Bone's nuclear capability, not pausing it, not hiding it, removing it. Wiring came out, hardware came out, nuclear pylons were eliminated. By 2011, the conversion was complete. This is the moment the Bone lost its original identity. Freed from the nuclear mission, the Bone was rebuilt. Its 3 internal bomb bays, with the largest total volume of any American bomber, were rewired to carry GPS-guided conventional weapons. Its attack radar was replaced with a synthetic aperture radar capable of tracking and targeting moving objects. A machine designed to destroy a city could now precisely strike a single tank. 4 years later, the moment finally came. December 17, 1998. Operation Desert Fox.
Two B-1 bombers crossed the Iraqi border at 26,000 feet, moving at roughly 550 miles per hour. On the trailing aircraft, Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Graney is chewing tobacco. On the panel in front of him, a red light has just come alive. Two Iraqi SA-3 missile batteries have activated their tracking radars. Al-Qut is 30 miles ahead. At that speed, 3 minutes away. Graney later described that night. Failure was not an option that night. We all had very big chips on our shoulders after the Gulf War. 63 Mark 82 bombs, 500 pounds each, fall from the belly of the world's most sophisticated bomber, but not all of them leave. 20 jam inside the bomb bay, a 32% failure rate on the most important night of the Bone's life. But the rest hit their target. 13 years after entering service, the B-1 had finally gone to war. The bomber designed to deliver nuclear weapons into the Soviet Union had, instead, dropped 43 conventional bombs on a barracks in Iraq. If the Cold War planners of 1974 could have seen this night, they would not have recognized their own aircraft. By the early 2000s, the Bone had become America's default heavy hitter. Kosovo, 1999. Only 6 B-1s flew. They accounted for less than 2% of combat sorties, but delivered more than 20% of the total ordnance. Afghanistan, 2001. Just 8 B-1 bombers dropped nearly 40% of all coalition ordnance in the first 6 months. These numbers were not accidents. They were math.
A single B-1B could carry up to 24 2,000-pound JDAM precision bombs, or 84 Mark 82 bombs. It could take off from Diego Garcia, loiter for 8 hours over Afghanistan, service dozens of separate close air support requests, and fly home. One B-1 sortie equaled roughly 24 F-15E sorties. The Bone, built to obliterate Moscow, was now dropping conventional bombs on Taliban caves and valleys that had never seen electricity. Then came its most infamous mission, April 7th, 2003. A B-1B is refueling above western Iraq when an AWACS call comes in. Intelligence believed Saddam Hussein had just entered a restaurant in Baghdad's Al-Mansur district. Minutes pass. Commanders argue. Lawyers review the target. The order is given. 12 minutes later, 4 2,000-pound bombs fall on the location. Saddam was not there. He had left earlier. 18 Iraqi civilians were there. They did not survive. A strategic bomber worth hundreds of millions of dollars, designed for nuclear war between superpowers, had been used to strike a residential block based on intelligence that turned out to be wrong. This is the distance between the aircraft the Bone was born to be and the aircraft it had been forced to become. But the aircraft was aging, and the aging was becoming dangerous. May 1st, 2018, West Texas. A B-1 catches fire in flight. The offensive systems operator pulls his ejection handle. The escape hatch above him blows away, but the seat does not fire. The aircraft commander makes a decision. His voice comes over the intercom. Cease ejection. We'll try to land. For 25 minutes, 4 American airmen fly a burning bomber through the Texas sky. One of them strapped to an armed ejection seat that could fire at any moment. The commander could have ordered the rest of the crew to eject and save themselves. He did not. Somehow, they bring it down at Midland International. All 4 received the Distinguished Flying Cross. 6 years later, on January 4th, 2024, another Bone died at Ellsworth. Dense fog rolled across the runway, shifting winds. A B-1 came in to land, failed to increase throttle when the wind changed, and struck the ground 100 feet short of the runway. It skidded 5,000 feet across the airfield and burst into flames. $451 million gone in 5 seconds. All 4 crewmen ejected safely, but the accident report from Air Force Global Strike Command was scathing. It cited the weather, it cited the equipment, then it cited something more damaging than either: an organizational culture that tolerated decaying airmanship skills. The bomber that had once frightened the Kremlin was now being killed by neglect at its own home base.